Hey there, I'm Ginny.
And I'm Monica.
And this is Hitting Her Mark,
Podcast for women in the arts, actors, filmmakers, artists who are passionately chasing their creative dreams.
while juggling the beautiful chaos of caring for the ones you love.
We're here to share stories, insights, and inspiration, proving that you can hit your mark without compromising what matters most.
So if you're ready to make your creative dreams a reality, let's dive in.
Kelly Hope Taylor is a professional actor with over 20 years of experience spanning stage, screen, and voiceover. A classically trained performer with deep roots in theater, her work has been seen and heard around the world. Kelly has appeared in a wide range of projects, including Paramount's forthcoming Jean-Benet Ramsey series and the family adventure film Autumn and the Last Jaguar, produced by Studio Canal. You can find her in appearances across most major platforms like Amazon Prime, Netflix, Hallmark, CTV, CW, CBC, and Lifetime USA. Kelly's distinct voice has made her a go-to talent in the commercial and narrative voiceover world, delivering dynamic, witty, and emotionally resonant reads. She's also lent her voice to numerous e-learning and international campaigns. She has dipped her toe back into the producing pool with some upcoming independent projects, an animation series premiering this year on YouTube, as well as some original content exploring spirituality, mindfulness, and intentional living. Kelly is a proud mother of two and a mentor to emerging actors, coaching young performers, including her own children, as they find their voices and confidence in the industry. Welcome, Kelly Hope Taylor, to the podcast. Kelly and I met on set of The Christmas Checklist, which was 2 movies filmed in Montreal. And I just had such a great time working with her and chatting with her on set, and we became fast friends. Kelly has such a great on-set and on-screen presence. She's very funny and driven, and you can just tell from the conversations we've had that she's such a dedicated mom to her 2 boys. Kelly, we can't wait to dig in and hear your story. So thank you for being here with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much. I love what you're doing. And I think it's really, really important. And I'm sure that's what we'll get into today. So I'll just leave it at that for now. Thanks for having me.
Yes. And I mean, thank you so much for joining us. And I just learned that I know your husband. And this is like really interesting because now you have a 2-actor household.
Yes. Well,
So that is very interesting.
4 actor households. Both boys, both my sons are also actors and have successfully entered into the union as well. And so we're like the Von Trash family.
You need a tour bus now. That's awesome. Okay, so we like to kick off every episode sort of starting from the beginning, and I want to get into that as well about the boys and how they transitioned into the business. But if you can share how your artistic journey began for you. I know you're originally from Ontario, but you've moved around quite a bit since then. So where did things begin for you, Kelly?
Where did they begin? I was born in a small town. So really, I was born in a small town. Yeah, I'm from Northern Ontario originally, and my father is now retired Air Force, but he was Air Force. So that's sort of a traditional story that I love to tell only because he was posted into North Bay, which is about 4 hours north of Toronto. And I now say Toronto like I've never lived in Toronto, which is really funny. Anyways, Toronto. And he met my mom. He was a guitarist and she was a singer and she was looking for a lead guitar for her band. And that's how they met. And it's a classic 70s love story. And from there, we moved. I lived in Nova Scotia for a few years. And then we moved into the States on the West Coast in Tacoma, Washington, near Seattle. Lived there until I was 14, I guess, approaching 14. So I really had an interesting, very formative, like early teenage experience because I was living in the United States. So I had a really unique sort of view of what that was like, even though it is, people joke it's the Northwest, it's like Canada, but it's not, but it does have a lot of similarities. And then, we moved back to North Bay and I finished high school up there. And it was probably, I feel like I have a really distinct memory of about 13, 14, where I remember looking at myself in the mirror and almost like deciding like, I'm going to be an actor. Like that's what I'm going to do as my career at like that young of an age. And I dibble dabbled a little bit in some drama club in the early days and had done a little bit of Kiwanis, but nothing like super formalized, especially because we moved around. So, you can't get yourself too involved in, like long-term clubs and things like that. But that was my vision. And then I was blessed enough in North Bay. My grandmother was amazing and took me to see a play that was an amazing, they still run it. It's called Toros, and it stands for Theater Outreach on Stage. And the program is run through the public school board. And if you are anywhere from grade 8 up to 25, so basically like towards end of university, you can be a part of this production. It's completely student performed, so a full musical. So when I had moved back, my grandmother took me to see their production of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. And I fell in love with the musical. And the funny part with that is I always wanted to be in Joseph. And I would tell people that. And they're like, oh, what role? I was like, I want to be Joseph. That's what I want to do. But yeah, so that kind of sparked it. So I joined the next summer. And so, had done every summer from there on. I was in this, 100-student production of musicals. And then I had done drama club during high school. And the funny part, too, with that is you get a credit for doing because they considered it summer school. It was wonderful. So I think I graduated high school with like 18 drama credits, like beyond what any normal Ontario grad would require. Yeah. So I remember very distinctly in high school, I think it's different now. I do. I really think it's different now because we have like the TikToks and YouTube and now, but like back in my day, if you were in the drama club, you were kind of a weirdo still, like especially where I went to school. It was not because I think it welcomed and opened arms to all sorts of different people, right? And I was not there because, obviously I felt accepted and those were my people, but I wasn't there because I didn't fit in elsewhere. I was like, I'm there because I'm training for my career. So I really, it's so funny because just to think of my mentality, I really took it upon myself to be the ambassador for the drama club in the sense that I was like, we're not all like weird nerds that, yes, we sometimes wear black and go to the coffee shop and whatever, you know what I mean? Go to the beat nights. We do. But we're not all Dungeons and Dragons folk, No, disrespect. No disrespect.
Yes.
That was a gateway for a lot of people to get into acting. I know that. So I remember speaking with a fellow, classmate at the time, and he was literally on the track for going into like professional, like track and field, probably in the States. He was like looking at scholarships and he's going to be moving on to something big there. So he was very driven on the athletic side of things and did lots of long distance running, which is not my jam at all. And I remember the two of us were sitting down and I sort of like pitched it, I guess, as my being the ambassador. And he was like, I was like, yeah, this is like my career. I'm going to be doing this in my career. He's like, okay, cool. And he was just like, because he was curious. I think he was drama curious and wanted to know a little more. So
you were the ambassador, so it only made sense that he would talk to you. Yeah.
Self-declared, by the way. Like I never officially gave myself that title, but I did act like that. I felt it was important because I didn't want everyone, I don't know, at the time, it really bothered me. It still does when people get really cliquey. And I hate that folks will judge something they might not understand. And it might partially be because they've never been exposed to it because that's not their background. And obviously, like where I came from, I did not come from a background where I had athletic, oriented parents. They were artisans, like musicians first. And then, my mom was also a seamstress and what else? She did tons of stuff. And then my dad was a woodworker. You know what I mean? So like I lived in that space. Where creativity was really woven into our everyday lives. Anyways, that's what I did. And then I went off to university and I went to U of T and I lived in Toronto and there we go, Toronto. And
yes.
Yeah, I did my training down there and that's where I started my, little baby Kelly going into the fray and into the world, the industry.
Kelly, what was that experience like for you, theater school? Like, did you feel that in general it prepared you for the industry at all? What was your takeaway on theater school? There's some facial expressions happening.
I know. It's like, what do I say? Is this all going to be on video?
I will add that, U of T, the theater program, very high regard.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
It's grown a lot. So I went to the UTM program, which was the Mississauga campus, and the downtown program was very much established at that point. But I kind of entered in, I want to say I was close to the 4th or 5th year, so fairly new, where this program was taking University of Toronto students and pairing us in with the Sheridan College program in Oakville, which they have, it's
interesting.
a very distinct musical theater program, acting,
Yes.
studio work, like all of that. So it was a really beautiful program because, well, we sort of joked because we were like, and I also mean this respectfully, but at the time, you're 19, right? We're like, we're the smart actors. Like we would kind of roll in, right, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, little academia, coming.
Yeah, because you were in the academic program, right?
And
Like most.
right. Bringing our Bertolt Brecht with us under arm and do our show.
All your analysis,
Yeah.
all your homework to show.
Yeah, and then God bless them, you had a lot of Sheridan College musical theater students who were really being prepared for the workforce. So they were getting ready for cruise ships and stuff. So at the time, I don't think you'd get away with this as much now. But, those students were really expected to have the heels, the nails, the hair had to be done when you walked in to those programs. We did not. We were schlepping on our little, thrift store buys and whatever. But anyway, that was a unique program. I wanted trees as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, it was just a nice blend, and it offered me doorways after if I decided, at some point I wanted to up my education or enter into a different profession of some sort, something along that line, going into teaching or what have you, that might be the pathway. You still had to audition to get in. You still had to prepare like every other program, but you also still had to make sure you had the marks for U of T. So we had a really beautiful group, and that's what we did. And so by the end, I graduated with an honors BA in theater and drama studies. So it was a specialist program as well as a 2-year performance diploma through Sheridan. So I had both, which was really great. And then off we went. So yeah.
So did you continue with the path of theater, or were you like, no, I want to be TV film? Was it just whatever?
Well, to go back to the question about did you feel it was preparing you for the industry? I think it's interesting because now that I'm much older and wiser, I look back, there's things that I feel the program did have gaps in, which were basically how to run a business. And you are an entrepreneur, right? You are an artist, entrepreneur. You need to know how to manage. You should be able to know when you get out of there how to do your taxes and figure that out, and that wasn't offered. And I think it might be changing. And I did have discussions with a few folks who, I was in school with, who are now also, they do staff part-time and what have you. They'll go in as instructors. And I talked to them about that, where we didn't have a lot of the nuts and bolts for the industry. We knew how to do a mail merge so that we could send out our packages through Microsoft.
Practical. Yes. Your headshot, your package.
How to do a mail merge so you can just, whatever. That was about it. So yeah, I feel, I definitely had my theater foundations. But again, I think anyone who got into the program already just had the talent. So it really just gave you a toolkit to kind of be able to lean on if you needed it. But I knew I wanted to get into film and television. But at this point in time, super big theater nerd. I still am. I'm a sucker for puppets, mask work, give me a character.
Yes.
I'm a sucker for all of that. I love it.
Well, just to go back on that point about theater school, because I also went to theater school, Kelly, and I found it the same. I think it does prepare you for a career in theater, to audition for a play, how to be on stage, your voice, your movement. We had theater. Yeah. But I did feel that it did not prepare me for film and television. I maybe had one film class in my 3-year George Brown program. And I remember, and then I don't know if you did the showcase where that's how I secured my agent right out of school. Yeah. So you do a Theater Ontario showcase and you secure an agent. And if you're lucky, not everyone does.
Lucky, yeah.
Yeah. And then but your agent is pretty much submitting you for commercials and, film, TV stuff right away. So I was like, what is this? I was not ready for the film and TV audition or the commercial auditions.
So how, like, that for me was the biggest learning curve, I think, was like learning how to audition. Like, I didn't even know where to stand, what to, like, what, it was like walking into a room, like, I don't know, like, what am I going to do here?
Yeah, and even like basics of like what to wear, like what would be appropriate to wear on camera, right? And that sort of thing too. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you finish with U of T, and then you're out in the real world working. What was like your first? Did you get an agent? Did you start auditioning? And what was that experience for you? What was your first thing
Trying
that
to
you?
remember. Yeah. Oh, what was my first thing? But well, funny enough, I didn't secure an agent when I went to the Ontario showcase because I hadn't. I entered into like the workforce, and I worked at a new age bookstore down in Toronto, which was it's no longer there, but like oh my god, I loved it. Anyway, the Omega Center, which was in Yorkville. So it was interesting because during TIFF, we'd have everyone staying over at the Four Seasons just down the road, right? So, I served Nick Nolte one evening. He was in town. He was filming. He was there for TIFF, came in with a director.
And he was looking for that new age book, change his life.
I thought he was homeless. Like, I didn't know. Like, when he came in, you wouldn't have not known right away that was Nick Nolte. You're like, who's this man with a trench coat, pajama pants, and the plastic bag? Like, it was weird. And I was like, hi, Mr. Nolte. Like, hi, Mr. Nolte. Can I cash you out? Yeah, looking for all actors, of course, right? Is all like looking for their,
Christopher.
Paul Giamatti. I remember Paul Giamatti came in. I remember helping him out with something, So anyways, there were all those types of actors, which was an interesting tension when you think about it, right? Because like I'm wanting to get into this industry and I'm there working at a bookstore and I've got people who are like in the industry doing their thing. But I self-represented for a while and submitted myself to non-union gigs and union where possible. And submitted to Stephanie Gorin. I remember auditioning for one of the first rounds of Mamma Mia when Mervish was putting it on. Like I got in the room with her. But yeah, it was a bit of a slog at first. And I think my first gig on my own that I booked was a non-union commercial for Samsung flip phone, which was, here I am dating. I didn't already with the Sarah.
Hey, we're there.
Yeah, and I
also had a flip phone. Yes,
You had a flip phone.
sold mine.
Now we're going back to it, right? All the kids want a flip phone because it's super cool.
Yes.
And like,
Well, it's also good for the kids. We will be investing in some flip phones for our boys.
agreed.
Yeah.
easier to type on. No, like the little buttons. Don't you remember the little buttons?
Well, it's more satisfying.
easier.
At least know you've hit a button, right? Like, as not to sound ancient, but yeah, it was bizarre, and it was one of the first, I think, like internet like promotionals as well. So it was kind of interesting. I was a disaster. Like looking back, I was a disaster because you're so nervous and and I did a bunch of other little things too, but this specifically sticks out still because I remember being in this like old warehouse, can't even tell you where in Toronto, and the execs were up in this like office.
Yes.
Like you're in the factory worker hall space and they're up there kind of watching, which was so bizarre. And
then a walkie-talkie, like notes.
yeah,
And we were like, I know you're talking about me, but you're not talking to me. Yeah.
exactly.
And I just have to pretend like I didn't hear.
Yep. And yeah, when I would screw up a line, because like they throw it to you. And of course, that pacing's different. You go to theater school, you learn how to like, you got weeks to work on something, right? Weeks to memorize. And
Yeah.
And
that's like a key difference between theater and film. Like doing a theater production, the amount of time you have to luxuriate over the lines and discuss the meaning and what that person's is like. There's so much beauty in that. But film is like, let's go.
yeah, which is a hard thing to calibrate with when you go through the theater type of program because you're really pushing what the art is, and you're really trying to push like and honor the playwright and the lines of the playwright. And you have to make your day when it comes to on camera, and that kind of does go out the window to a degree. Anyway, so Samsung flip phone, that was a disaster, and then eventually I got representation.
Did you make?
Yes, I did. Thank God.
Once you got representation, so what kind of changed for you at that point? Like, were you working more regularly? Did you continue on? Was there a break in there at some point?
Yeah.
What was next?
I booked with an agent, and I think I just sent out packages again, and she was a new agent at the time. I did have an interesting
Yeah,
I don't know.
Do say more.
yeah.
I'm tired now in the industry is what I'm trying to think about. Okay,
Is it an agent?
I had an odd. Okay, I'll just say this.
Yes.
I did a mail out. I did get a response from a very reputable agent and agency, very much reputable. He and I had a chat on the phone, and he just kept saying, "I don't know if I should break my own rule." And I was like, "Okay," and it kind of like hung in the air, and I was like, "Uh huh." And then he's like, "Yeah, and then he said it again, like, I don't know if I should break my own rule. And I was thinking, like, well, what's your rule? What rule are you wondering you shouldn't be breaking? And it kind of hung. And of course, I'm like, I'm not going to give much, right? Like, I'm not going to screw it up. So I'm holding back a little bit, just kind of waiting. I was like, okay. So I was kind of thinking, like, break your rule, guy. Like, if it means like you want to bring me onto your roster, like, break it. And it just kind of left at that. That's every so often that will waft in. I'm like, what did he mean by that? Like, it was.
So you still don't know?
She never or it blocked it out. Like, honestly, I do not know. I do not know.
We must find out after conversation. When the recording's done, we're going to figure this out.
Kelly, did you end up being represented by this agent?
No. So I let that one
Okay.
sit because it was odd.
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't know where that was going to lead.
no.
I say you dodged a bullet.
Yeah. And being that my mom had been a singer and was, a very beautiful woman in the 70s, she had told me a few stories in the past where a producer, I'm going to use air quotes here, but like a producer would, offer the moon on opportunities, but there was an exchange expected, which was interesting. So I definitely had that in the back of my head. Like, I think my mom's style of parenting, God bless her, she's passed now, but like I think her style of parenting was scare them straight, like scare her into,
Oh, yeah.
not taking too many crazy chances. Cause I think she was convinced I was going to join a cult or something. Cause I was a very open child, very open minded.
Right.
So, but anyways, yeah, I booked with this smaller agent and I just wasn't feeling the traction. And then I ended up finding a new agent. And with this new agent, that was actually shout out to Stephanie Drummond. I adore you. I went to school with Steph. She had this agent put a word in for me actually. And Steph was in Mean Girls. And so she was having her moment and God bless her. I adore her. And yeah, that was the in. And it was my first audition with this agent. And I booked the first audition. And ladies, that's unprecedented, right? Like showing up, you're like, oh my God.
So great.
Yeah.
What a good feeling too. It's like instant validation. It's instant. It's like you did good. You're choosing me.
Feedback, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to go back a little bit. When you say you were self-submitting, like how does that look? Like during that period? Because I mean, now we have all these tools that we can self-submit.
Yeah.
But I think back then there was maybe one website,
like breakdown services. I remember, like I'm telling you, I went for like Backstage. I think was still like was there. Theater Ontario, I think had like an audition like board, community board.
Mandy, was there Mandy?
Mandy, thank you, Mandy.com. I'm also, dare I say, Craigslist was a place I went.
Yeah.
Might have, but I think Mandy was probably the most safe and reputable.
Mm-hmm.
Might have been where I booked the Samsung and that sort of thing. So yeah, like if you've been around for a while, like I mean, they were still faxing. You were still faxing submissions and to actual casting in those days. And I remember a courier dropping off the printed script to me for this gig that I booked. Yeah. So it's funny how technology is really like, I don't know. It's like made it easier, but it's also made it harder because now everyone can kind of supposedly like get in there. You know what I mean?
Well, even the difference of like used to be going into the room to self-taping now, right? Like we're doing a lot more on our end. And also, yeah, the technology required, you need to know how to edit. You need to know how to set up your lighting. It's not what it used to be.
No.
Okay, so I want to get to at what point are we booking these movies of the week? And I know you did a bunch of theater projects. You did some fringe shows. So when did things start to pick up for you? And what's that like?
So I think a lot of this being a military kid really informed sort of my life in general. So for me to move and transplant myself elsewhere it's not such a crazy notion where someone who may have lived in the same town all their lives, like my husband, by the way, I got to give a shout out to my husband if I can sidestep really quickly. When we met, he had been shooting a short film in Halifax where he was stationed. Living. He's a Nova Scotia boy. And they were in town for a short film festival. And we met through one of my then roommates. When we met, I was hole in the wall theater doing this independent theater production, some like revisited Shakespeare. And he had been a stand-in on Made in Canada and, for Rick Mercer, and had been, kind of rolling in the dough basically in his early 20s. And so here he meets me like, I'm in theater, and he was the voice of reason, if you will. And I mean no disrespect to theater actors, but he was the one who really pushed me further to be like, you need to get yourself an agent and you need to get yourself on to film and television. Like, you need to do this. This is how you're going to make the bread and butter, the commercials and like all of that. Right. And I was like, hey, so I do have to give him a shout out for pushing me in that way. Yeah.
And I got to work with him. He was a super nice guy.
Yeah. Irritatingly nice. My God. He's irritatingly balanced. Like when, I get upset sometimes and I'm like, I just want him to be like on my side and be like, yeah, and another thing. Yeah. And he's very like devil's advocate. He is very good at offering like the other side. And it's just
A reasoning with you.
it's kind of annoying. But anyways, I digress.
So did you get an agent first? Is that how things started rolling?
I had an agent, and then it was like things were falling flat. A part of what I tend to tell people sort of in, conversation is like, here we are two now actors living in Toronto, trying to make our way and, starving at, actors, if you will, because it's not consistent. And that was taking its toll. I know like Mark was doing really great at that time. I was having, again, a bit of a slump. And it was just like, then my mom died. And then I was like, oh, I need to take care of myself. Like I had a moment, life skills moment where I got to do something. So I took a break. I went back to school. I got my BEd because I thought if we're going to fall back, let's fall back with like supply teaching or something as opposed to working at a bookstore for $9 an hour.
Right. Barista. Yeah.
Just to have it. So I went and did that. And then it was sort of around that time that we're like, I just needed a change of pace. And that's where Mark and I both decided, okay, we'll do a change of pace. And an opportunity came up just to go to that region, Gatineau, which at the time, I had never heard of. And just to start, living, what did I call it? Coloring in the lines. I tried that for about a couple years and we decided to focus on family, got married, started a family. So I took a bit of a hiatus at that point. I'm in a new region, so I don't have representation, trying to focus on what it's like to be a mom with two boys who are like 18, 19 months apart. And it was just a bit of a run for a while there. So once they got to be a certain age, I really felt called back, two beautiful kids, wonderful husband, having a bit of a simpler life in this smaller community, really compared to Toronto. And I felt this like separation. I don't want to say numb, but I was definitely feeling like I wasn't in my life in the way that I really wanted to. There was just something
like a disconnect.
It wasn't feeling great. And I sort of had this odd little moment. If I continue on this trajectory, I don't think I can do this. Like it was coming up. I was very clear though with my husband. I was very clear with that because I had taken a full-time position. I was teaching drama and I was, teaching art and the things I really enjoyed. And teaching young people, I do love teaching young people, but that pace was not sitting well with me. So literally I took a leave of absence from where I was. And that's when, because my husband by that point already had an agent. So we got the same agency. And that's where I had no idea at the time that Ottawa had such a bustling film industry. Like I really didn't. And so started auditioning and doing my thing and getting into the community there. And then it took about a year or so. And then it was like, boom, it was just like work. I was like, okay. So like you said, Monica, it was like, you got the data, right? Like you're getting that feedback that this is a good pathway.
Yes.
And and in hindsight, never would have thought like that's what I would be doing.
But how amazing, Kelly. And this resonates with me so much because I went through something very similar where I also took a hiatus. And you do at some point, like you kind of start to lose yourself because you're just going through the motions of daily life and all the responsibilities you have as a parent, to your partner, to your household, and you just sometimes it feels like, and I'm sure there's a lot of women feel this way, you just get carried by life, right? You're just being
Totally.
carried through it. And then at some point, you're like, hold on a second. Am I even enjoying this? Am I happy? Is this fulfilling me? It's so great to have that awareness so that you can and have that conversation and you have a supportive partner that is like, let's make a shift. Let's do this change. And then, yes, the validation of that, I belong here. This is right for me. I love that. So you start to work more consistently. And so now you've kind of made this change in your life. So I'm curious, I do want to talk about some specific projects. So I might kind of shift us. Maybe I'm catapulting us too far ahead, but can we talk a little bit about Autumn and the Black Jaguar? Because I know this is like really far down the line. You've done a lot of projects before that, but I just remember when I was on set with you for Chris's Checklist and you had booked this, but you couldn't really like talk about it. Yeah. You play a powerful, ruthless businesswoman in this film, and you got to film this in Mexico. Can you share what that experience was like for you? What it was like filming in a different country? I mean, the movie's so visually appealing. I also want to know if you got to see it on the big screen with your family because it's the perfect movie to do so. Okay.
Yeah,
Tell me about
absolutely. Yeah, because a lot of the Lifetime films when my kids were smaller, especially mommy's going off for a few days or gone. I won't see you till the next day, and then it's like, what would you work on? It's like, you're too young. You can't watch this. Like, it's not appropriate for young kids. So that was a blessing. Yeah, I think that's like the bucket list item for most actors is like the dream and you see it a lot with the breakdowns for a lot of commercials, right? When you've got like the car commercial shooting in Cuba or whatever,
Right.
or Dominican during the winter, you're like, Jesus, please let me get this. I want to go somewhere too.
Your slate if you have a valid passport.
Yes. I will get one. Yeah, exactly. I will say this, and this is sort of my jam. So, I do think this manifested from something I wrote down. And I had already had that little bit of like, I would love to do something like that. But it was definitely a manifested moment. And it was kind of creepy because I realized after what had transpired, I was like, holy cow, this is like incredible. And so we might lose listeners at this point. I don't know if you're
Woo. I am so on it.
Yeah, I'm like super woo woo. So this audition came through and it was like I could see myself doing it for sure. And the way I kind of got the feel for her, it was like, so she's like a Cruella de Vil of the jungle is kind of how I interpreted her. And there were only two simple scenes, and one was her talking on to the press and doing that. And then another one was her, in the jungle doing her, maniacal behavior, what have you. And so I got that sense that they really wanted to see, like, can she flip between like the nice professional, you can trust me kind of personality into this sort of devilish creature. Because she was a animal trafficker for exotic animals. And despite her line of work, can we just say, way to go, boss babes, right? Even though she's an animal trafficker, she was the boss. And that was wonderful.
She was making bank.
Right? She just got her bag. That's all she did. And then Gilles, who is the director, his wife Prune wrote the script. And Gilles, his background is documentary filmmaking, which is why it's such a beautifully shot film. And I just got a message after I auditioned from my agent, like, the director would like to chat with you. And I was like, oh, okay. I figured like needing to get to know me, maybe perhaps for a callback or something like that, because they were going to be shooting in Mexico, and maybe am I a diva, right? Like, can I handle maybe rough things or I don't know,
whatever.
that feeling. They wanted to sort of get a feel. But yep, we just had a chat and he explained he said they're a small family business, but he's got a really good thing going with Studio Canal. Not so small, but I love that he presented it like that in a less intimidating way. Yeah. And then he offered me the role. I was like, okay, great. And he goes, you have to be mindful of like tarantulas and stuff. I'm like, okay, well, I like camping, like
Yes.
But like air mattress camping, like glamping, but like, oh, I'm a camper.
I've done that before.
Yeah, we're like, I'll do whatever. Oh yeah. So going down there was bucket list moment. We were in Playa del Carmen. I got put up in a beautiful hotel, and I have to say, Mexico and the people of Mexico, that area especially generous and kind and just amazing. However, such a different work ethic on set. So we had an international, these guys are from France. So they have their own sort of way of doing things with the local Mexican crew, some crew from Montreal. Most of the heads of department came down from Montreal, and then mainly Canadian actors. So we have a lot of different like styles and traditions and like just workflows that I think was a really interesting insight. And this is where I think the movie of the week work, with Lifetime, for example, I called it like boot camp for actors, because you're trying to get 14 pages in a day, right? And that's where you learn that memorizing really quick and you get it done and you somehow do it. And long days we were doing like, because there were kids and Jaguar, we were doing like maybe 1 or 2 pages a day. And I was like, 1 or 2 pages a day? I didn't understand, like, how are we doing this? But if you have a cat, right? Is anyone here a cat owner? Have you ever tried to train a cat or to get a cat to do something on your schedule? It doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing, but bigger, right? Like these Jaguars.
Yeah.
So yeah. And also our animal wranglers were local too, from the Ottawa Gatineau area. So all like that head of departments were Canadian, but like beautiful. But yeah, 1 to 2 pages a day. You've got cats, you've got kids, and then you've got the heat. And so here I am, like, I'm used to a certain pace. And the locals know you don't move fast, you take your time, because it's hot and you're in the jungle and you don't want to overexert. And you got to be really careful to not overexert. But it was great.
And there's probably all kinds of animals and insects and like wildlife.
Then there's that. So like, I'm staying on a resort. So they fog the trees and do all the things, right? But then we go and we drive out about 20, 30 minutes and we're in the boonies in the jungle. And when I got there on my day one, one of the ADs was like, just be careful. So just so you know, the bathrooms are around. It's like dusty and gravelly and, whatever. They're around there. They're like outhouses style, potties. And just be careful to check the lid and whatever for scorpions. And I was like, oh, okay. Like thinking we're going to make fun of the foreign, girl who's new here. You're like, no, really. And I was like, okay, I'll just hold this book up a second. They were not kidding. So yeah, so that was interesting. But like, we were dressed accordingly, like I wasn't in flip-flops. I was in boots, and safe and what have you. But yeah, like, look out for tarantulas before you sit down. Look out for scorpions, because the scorpions sting. The tarantulas don't. But God, that was interesting.
Yeah. How long were you gone for? How was it with your family, like leaving them behind, or did they get to come to visit? How did that all shake out?
Okay, so this is interesting because okay, so Gilles, I adore what he has going. He has built such a beautiful life with his wife and his kids. He's got 4 young ones, and they all moved and lived there, and they had to be there for about a year. And Lumi, who was playing Autumn, had also been down for almost close to a year at this point, because she had to imprint basically with the Jaguars, and Hope was the main one who was a little more camera friendly, I guess. Like, she would do more tricks and things where the other one didn't. So they were down for about a year. And I remember chatting with Gilles, and he's like, yeah, you can bring your kids down if you wanted, like whatever. But it was one of those things for me, and I'm sure you can relate as a parent, where I was like, I love the idea of that, but I'm going down to work and I just can't. Like, I cannot fathom having my whole family there, right? And also having to be a professional with, a new group of people I haven't worked with before in a new company. And yeah. And my husband gets it.
I so get that. Yeah. Because I feel like I've been away too. And I was like, even when I go to work in Ottawa, for example, I have family that I could potentially stay with. And I can't, because I need that time to prep. I need that time. Like, I need my solo time. I can't focused. And then you feel like the pull of the demands of like your kids needing you, or they're going to go do something. And then you feel like you're missing out.
We're missing out. Or like you want to rush on set because you're like, oh, they're waiting for me. Like I gotta go.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it's challenging. And then the guilt sets in and like, am I doing so yeah, so that was kind of, thank goodness, like a husband that gets the industry, gets the work, It's not like he doesn't understand what that process is. And he said to me, I'm making him look really good here. So you're welcome. But no, he said, I know that this is really important to you. And, I wouldn't want to screw that up for you. And I think you should go down on your own. And it was just like permission granted. Not that I needed permission, but just he gave me that grace to be able to say no to bringing the group down. If I had been there maybe longer, maybe I would entertain them for a week. But yeah, I was there for about 10 to 12 days. I remember being in the makeup chair with one of the artists, and I was getting a little homesick and a little weepy. And there's a tension, right? Like, this is a bucket list thing. Oh my gosh, I manifested this. I feel so great. I'm so grateful to be here. I feel so thankful. But I miss my kids. And I felt like that tension and pull. I got a little weepy in the chair. And she was a mom, and she had, at the time, a 15-year-old boy. And she's like, nope. And she was just like working on me. She's like, nope. She's like, they need to know that you can go away, and they need to know that, when you go away, things still move and happen, and it's good for them too. I was like,
Yeah.
hey, yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
totally
that's so
agree.
great. But that feeling I think resonates with all of us here. Just even you just talking about it, I was like, I get it. I was starting to get teary eyed because that pull. Again, it's one of the reasons why we started this podcast. Why we want to talk about it, because sometimes you need that wise person to just say, no, it's good for them too. And I'm gonna remind myself of that.
Absolutely.
And to circle back about like permission, and it's not like we need permission from our spouses. We know we're going to do it anyway. They know we're going to do it anyway. But it's just like this little, like, it's almost like a cord snip. And it's just like, it's okay.
Just feel this, okay.
Support. It's support. You are partners. You're in it together. You're parenting together. You need to know that the other person has your back while you're gone. And that empowers you to go and feel good about what you're about to do. So that's really important.
Yeah.
Kelly, you've done so many things. I want to cover them as much as I can in the little time we have left. You also recently, and I want to touch on your voice work too, because that's a big part of your career that I'm really
I got to double
in.
down. I have to have the headset and my nice mic today.
Yes, I love it.
Otherwise.
I love it. Yeah. So you also recently filmed for the upcoming JonBenet Ramsey project, which is starring Melissa McCarthy and Clive Owen.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that experience? Obviously, it's a story with a heavy subject matter. It's also based on a true story, highly anticipated series. True crime has a strong following. Did you feel the weight of that going in, like the eyes that will be on it, but also the responsibility of tackling such strong, heavy subject matter?
That's a very, very good question. And it indicates what a sensitive, intuitive person you are, Monica, because it was interesting for a lot of reasons. I got called, like I had been auditioning for all sorts of roles across the spectrum, right, for that series. Nothing was coming through. And I was like, okay, I'll keep doing your thing. And my agent called me and said, are you available next week? And it was like a really quick turnaround. I'm like, yes. And they're like, well, we have this role. Anyway, I'll cut to the chase. They were writing a few extra roles, and I think to help move story forward. It's a limited series, but for those who know the JonBenet Ramsey story, it was a real media maelstrom, if that's how you pronounce it. It was crazy in the 90s and a lot of criticism. And so there was a lot of conflict. And I think also being a parent now, going into an environment where that story and having lived through some of that tabloid enjoyed business. And then you deep dive, right? When you're auditioning, you start to deep dive through who those real people are and what was really happening at the time. So they had been working together since probably early July as a unit. And so those are long, long days and a lot to kind of carry. So I was kind of curious walking in. Also, my first gig in Calgary, which was interesting. Yes, you could feel it. It's, definitely like Calgary is pretty awesome. They got huge stages, studios. Like they really doubled down to help lure Hollywood up to this area. But yeah, it's heavy and it's hard to not, especially like a lot of what I was doing is, I'm play a newscaster, news anchor. And so your exposition is all about the details of murder and suspects and all of that. Like that's hard to shake kind of after.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah,
real
I kind of
gritty
felt it.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then even just going on to that set and, we're all used to going on set, you do your job, but then once the cameras are off, you're joking and you're laughing and you're doing whatever. But when it's in your face and you're constantly talking about this heavy subject,
Yeah.
it definitely sets a tone.
Yeah, and it's a moody set. It's beautifully shot. So you have, everything's in the same studio. So you've got you can see Jean Benet's bedroom set, over here. And then over there is like the green screen and then over there. So you can see like the different recreations and what have you. And then of course, going into wardrobe, getting fitted, you see all the reference photos for the beauty pageants and everything. And the story itself actually does a jump from Mrs. Ramsey, her mom. Yeah, so it's Melissa's character. So it jumps to her, which is younger, and then it actually jumps past into when she goes through her cancer treatments, and then it comes back to the storyline. So there's a lot of jumping through different timelines. So it reaches from I think the 60s, 70s into the early 2000s. So yeah, I of course focus being a theater nerd. Of course, they had wigs galore, beautiful like taffeta, prom dress style, pageant stuff, just like a huge warehouse. So that was kind of I was nerding out from the period piece end of things. So I focus on those things.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's great.
Always good.
Love it. Okay, I'm going to shift us into voice now because I do want to cover it. And I know that you've had a lot of success in the commercial voice space. So I want to know what your advice is to actors who are trying to get more work in this area and how they can level up their self-tapes. Like, what do you do as a voice artist to get those bookings? Like, what advice do you have for artists out there?
Yeah, so if this can offer any glimmer for anyone looking to break in, first of all, communicate with your agent and let them know that's something you're interested in because they might not know, but you need to get a demo. So part of the, quick, the coach in me can't help but share, like, just figure out what type of voice you have and listen to and commercials the best way to break through first, right? Because then the pools get smaller, the communities are smaller, so you need to kind of work over time, but commercials pretty good. Think of what other voices you hear that might sound like yours, or what kind of campaign you hear that you're like, yeah, I could voice that. And just start to think about if you consider your image, I'm a woman in her 40s who's, obviously a mom. And so I can like rich and delicious chocolate. Like I can get more, luxurious, but I'm not necessarily going to book like McDonald's, like, like 2 wraps for $2.99. Like I might, but we're probably gonna skew a bit younger.
So there's also like it's like a brand for your voice.
Yeah, you have to know kind of when brands would exist. So like for me, given the age and what have you, it's like, well, okay, I'm an educated woman. I do have a bit of I think that's part of that theater training. I do have a certain sound. So, think professional, think, luxury car brand, think chocolate, think whatever. And then if you're a guy, and think about where your range is and what you can do for that. But yeah, so that's the first part, and then work on getting a demo. Very lucky because my husband's an audiophile and had worked in radio since he was 14 years of age. So he and I like got a sitter the first time I put together a commercial demo, and we went into the radio station where he had connections. We just went in on a Saturday, and we both banged out. Like I wrote a couple of my first demo pieces, and then he's literally like, as I'm recording, he's freaking miracle worker. He's like editing as we go. So within 2 or 3 hours, we had a professional grade demo. I think we had 2. in the can. Like, I think I did my cut scenes because I was close to Montreal, so Ubisoft, for a lot of mocap, motion capture auditions and things like that. And then we did the commercial. So that's unique in that I didn't have to pay a professional for that. It cost me, $30, $40 for my sitter kind of thing. So that was great. But then my first booking, we were on our way. This is so perfect for your podcast. We were on our way to the water park as a family. It was the middle of the summer. And this last minute audition comes in, of course, and we arrive and I'm like, you guys go ahead. I have to crank this out. And so I literally recorded the audition on my cell phone in the car, because at least the car is kind of dense and it will keep the sound. And that was my first booking. So just know that it's okay if you're not like fully set up on all the tech right away. Just have a good demo and it's all right. Bruce Dinsmore, that's who I have to give credit to. Bruce was in, I think it was Arthur, I worked with him on Good Sam in Montreal. And a lot of the actors there were all in the voice world. And that was my moment when I was working with all of them, listening to them talk about it. I was like, I'm sitting on a gold mine and I haven't done anything with this. Like, oh my God, like what? I got to get a demo. And it was just one of those things. And he was the one who said, if you have to record in your car, like whatever. And I was like, okay, so anyways, you'll book by hook or by crook, but yeah. And then just find yourself a decent mic and slowly over time you will build. And if you have a closet that you don't need to use, fill it with foam, get an old mattress, like those foam mattresses you can get at Walmart. Like it doesn't have to be fancy, and stuff that thing with foam and just pocket yourself a little nook and kind of go from there. But again, the parent piece, now we're in a new space. I'm in like a split level house, and this house was built in like the 80s. So everything's a hollow core door. So sound will travel now everywhere. And I'm like, weren't they thinking about voice artists when they were building this house? So I have to know.
They're thinking about yelling down at your kids.
Well,
and how they want it to travel.
Honest to God. It's like, I go to mute and I'm like, shut up. MasterCard, and I'm trying to just temper the anger and the frustration. Yeah, and I got boys now like game, right? So they're all like, bro, like everything's bro, this, and they're loud and they're doing their thing. So I have to remind them, like, I can hear everything. The mic is on.
I'm lagging. I don't care.
You're cooked.
So have two boys. So yeah.
Yeah.
You have two bros.
Yeah.
Are we at this hair phase yet where it's all doing this now, Ginny?
No, they still don't care at all. We have to remind them every day, please wash your hair. Yes, I get that you're wearing a hat.
Hygiene.
But
I know, right?
General, basic, you're getting older.
Yeah.
Literally every day.
Yeah.
Take care of yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't think I'd have to remind, but I do. Yeah, same.
Okay, so we are reaching our hour here, so we're gonna round it out with maybe two more questions. So you've worked. You're a mentor. You're a coach. You're an actor, a voice artist, a mom, a partner. The list goes on. I'm sure. Do you have any inspirational words for artists out there who are juggling it all, or have you received advice from a mentor that you have also sort of passed on to artists that you work with? Any sort of final inspirational words that you could, especially for an artist who's maybe struggling out there right now? And
yeah,
it's tough. The industry is tough.
Yeah, we're having some interesting times right now, I've noticed. Yeah, it's interesting times. I am getting weepy and emotional when you ask, because I was sort of reflecting earlier about that and what meant the most to me. So one, for younger artists, especially if you're a youth, and I don't necessarily think a lot of youth are going to necessarily be watching this in particular because we're in a different stage of life. However, if you do have a younger one who's getting into it, just remind them that your special skill is being either a kid or a teenager or a 20-something. Like, that's your special skill when it comes to on camera. So really value that. But to expand it, like, being you is your special skill. Period. That's it. Like, that's your niche. That's your uniqueness. So the temptation, I know, is to kind of try to want to fit yourself into a trend or what you see going on out there. And I think it's important to not fall into that trap and to try to maintain your uniqueness. But if you are out there as a artist and you've got a family and you've got other things to kind of trying to stay afloat, like, I want to acknowledge those folks who are doing it and, getting it done. And it doesn't, and I'll say it was a friend who made an observation who just said to me, but I am going to get emotional. So sorry, guys, but great for the podcast. So she saw that I was spinning so many plates. She saw when a last minute booking came through, the hoops I had to get through for scheduling and try to secure a babysitter, or even just to get an audition when I had to drive 2 hours to Montreal, or take my kids with me to Montreal and bring them with me. And I asked a nice guy at a garage if I could park there because I was in a hustle, but I had 2 boys with me, like those things about like seeing the rescheduling and just all of that behind the scenes that no one else sees. When she acknowledged that to me, that she saw that, like, I felt like that mattered the most, because that is the success, right? That you're able to do that with everything else. Because if you are a solo person working on your career, you don't have to answer to anybody. It's totally different. And that's where I felt seen. So I want to say to whoever's out there and they're like, yeah, that's me, like the scheduling and all that, like just trying to make it all work. I see you. You are seen. We know what it's like. And I'm sorry. And I know. You're totally making me cry. Right? Like, yeah, that's the unsung work. And then you have to put it all aside and pretend like you didn't do all that. Right?
Yes.
And then miraculously you book things on top of that. Like, what? But the big success is just making it all work. So, and if you don't have an extended support network, I get that too, because we didn't have that, because we didn't live close to home where we had grandparents close by. So, just stay.
Oh, God, Kelly. I know
I feel like we can't go back from there.
No.
And I think you actually answered our typical final question for you.
Yeah.
Which is how you define success and hitting her mark. And yeah, you just wrapped it up so nicely there.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I just when Monica reached out and told me what you were doing, I was just elated, because that's exactly it, right? Like, that's the essence of it. And, civilians don't get it. They really don't. And I respectfully also say the male actors of the world, they have a lot of juggling to do too, but a lot of times that emotional load does still go onto our shoulders as the maternal parent figures. So I love that what you're doing. I hope it is a giant success. I am certain it will be, because regardless of what industry you're in, if you're an entrepreneur, you're creative, whatever, right? You're trying to be a leader in your community or in your corporate job or whatever. There's a hustle that goes on and behind the scenes that
a hustle.
Yes.
Yeah, it's such a hustle. And you really, really highlight that beautifully with that answer, because I think, a lot of women who are in our stage of life and are juggling so much are really going to resonate with that, because, you oftentimes, don't feel seen. You feel like you're jumping through these hoops, and like sometimes you're like, what am I doing? Like, what am I even doing this all for? Like, and then it is those bookings, and then those moments of validation where you're like, okay. Fuck.
So I think, like that moment, that turning point for me, I want to say it was like 2015, 2016. That was a turning point where I was looking at this road or that road. There's times here when I'm like you say, like, I just, like, do I want to continue this? Like, what am I doing? And then I realized, like, there's a purpose, like we're being called to some sort of greater purpose, and we're being called to this. And also going back to the woo-woo, I really do feel being an artist of any discipline, but an actor is a spiritual pathway. I really do feel that strongly because of the beatdowns we get consistently. Think of any other, like, if you're an artist, like a visual, and I love visual artists, but if you're an artist, no one's interrupting you. You can still do your art. and put it down in your shop on Etsy or whatever. And maybe someone will buy, maybe not. That's okay. But you're still able to do your art. Whereas we have to go out there and be like, here's my art. And then
You want it?
right? Yeah, how do you like me now? Or, maybe I had a kid that was sick all night and I'm still trying to like make sure I'm not puffy and whatever. You know what I mean? And we get rejected constantly and we don't even know, and it's not a rejection, but like, we don't get chosen. And
Yeah.
we have to just remember we're choosing ourselves and we are the chosen, because we are choosing to pursue this, but it builds you up into some things.
Yeah, the resilience for sure.
Resonate with so much of what you've said today. I feel like we can talk forever.
Yeah, I sure can.
There's so many things. And then like circling back to that moment, because it was like 2016, 2017 for me after my second mat leave. But I remember I had a good job. It was pretty good. I liked the people I worked with. I considered them my friends. And I remember saying to myself, I wish I was just happy.
Yeah, I know.
And
I know.
I just wasn't.
I know. Mm-hmm. Because you start to feel like you've been blessed with so many things, and then you
ask for more. You're like,
you're asking for more, and like, how dare you ask for more, right? Yeah, but you see people, right, that they never were tuned in enough to themselves to feel that pull or chose to ignore it. And you kind of see what the alternate is. And I mean this respectfully, but like, yeah, there's some people that have definitely nicer houses than I have. And maybe they're going on vacations a little more than we do. But I look at what they're doing and I'm like, that doesn't feel true to me, that path, And I mean no disrespect to anyone who chooses that way. But like, you just know it's not yours. Like, it's just not yours. And everybody thinks you're crazy, maybe, like, it took years, and I mean this respectfully as well as to my, I don't even think my sisters will listen to this, but I'm saying like a decade or more before one of my sisters even asked about like what the casting process is like. Like there was no curiosity about my job at all. You know what I mean?
I hear that. Yeah, I get that.
Wow, like I'm number 3, like, but the goal's number 1. And she's like, what are you talking about? And like I had to sort of explain like, well, a call sheet and this and that and what size of role, like blah, blah, blah. It was like 10 plus years. And I was like, wow, she never, like, they don't get it. They don't get it. So we get it, you guys. We get it.
Yes, we are a special breed.
We are. We really are.
Yeah.
That's what I adore about it, because I don't think it matters what walk of life you come from. If you're in this world, this space, like we are all like, we're our own little tribe, even actors from other parts of the world. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, we are a certain type.
Yeah, there's a certain something.
There's a certain,
Yeah.
there's a little something off there. Crazy enough to go out and do this thing. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Really appreciate you coming on the show with us. That was a beautiful conversation. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was such a wonderful conversation with Kelly Hope Taylor. One of my biggest takeaways is her advice to young people, but also, really artists and actors of all ages, to really just lean into who we really are. Like that is the special sauce that's going to get you. That's going to get you booked. That's going to get you the right kind of role. So often I guess it happens mostly when we're younger, or maybe when we're first starting out. We're trying to fit into this box. Like, we need to be this type of, girl. We need to be like this actor that's already existed. Like, our special thing is just being ourselves, being whatever age category we are, being whatever, if we're a high school student, we're a high school student. If you're a mom, you're a mom. And to just really lean into that. And that's what's going to get you those bookings and those special roles that really resonate with you.
Yeah. And I think so often you forget that you are the character, right? I've been in coachings before where a coach says, okay, now just say the lines as if you're saying the lines. And those are the moments where you're like, right, like I'm trying to give you a version of something that I think you want. I need to give you my version of me being this person and those words coming out of my mouth. And then it's just a little bit of a shift that grounds it suddenly. And it's like your perspective, your voice, right? So I love that advice. And it got pretty emotional there at the end.
Yes.
That idea of the hustle, right? The constant juggle and being seen, just someone recognizing, seeing something in you, but all the behind the scenes stuff that has to happen for you even to get, in front of people. Sometimes I'm amazed. I'll go to shoot a self-tape audition and the things I've done in that day, you carry that with you. All those things are all percolating within you.
Constantly on your mind.
Yeah.
They interfere with, really whatever you're doing. It's
Mhm.
always there. It's always on your mind. We have this ability a lot of the times to make it seamless because we've rehearsed it in our minds so much. And it
Mhm.
seems like we've done it and it's so easy. But you flip that, that card over and like you see the pathway to get there. All those little notches and all those little steps that you've taken to get you to where you are now. But all everybody sees is that perfect thing at the end. Like, well, you did it.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's why I think it comes back to that piece too of like bringing you and like that's part of you, right? All those bumps and hurdles that it took you to get to that moment or to shoot that self tape, that you're fitting into your schedule at 9 o'clock at night, that start from where you are. Do it from with that in you. That is part of it. It's all part of it. It's what shapes you. It's what makes us resilient. It's what makes us strong. It's part of our offering. It's part of our experience, our life experience. So I just thought that was really moving and touching.
And so often we've also heard like, leave your baggage at the door. And you're
Right.
like, no,
Yeah,
I need
I don't
that
agree with
baggage.
that.
That baggage is part of me.
Yes, exactly. And that's your uniqueness, right? So I think we got to bring that in whenever we can and own it. Yeah. That was a great episode. It's so happy she came on.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. And if anybody is feeling inspired to, I don't know, perhaps start a podcast of their own, me on Hitting Her Mark, we use Riverside, and we have an offering for you. If you want to use our promo code Hitting Her Mark, you get 15% off. So that's riverside.fm, and the promo code is Hitting Her Mark.
And the more we're learning about the industry, you got to get out there and create. So I hope this inspires you to go out there and create something. And Riverside's been a great platform so far. So go get it. Bye.